Hey, everybody, and welcome to Keeping It Spiritually Simple. I'm your host, Sandra. And before I introduce my guest right now, I just want to say this video is for informational purposes. Don't throw shade or judgment. Just expand your heart and in your mind into just knowing that there's more out there than what meets the eye or what you've been shown or talked about or that you studied in this lifetime. And so we just want to bring a little additional information to this platform. So without further ado, I am here with Robert Earl White, UFO experiencer and extraordinaire with a long red beard. Welcome, Robert.
How's it going? Glad to be here, Sandra.
Well, good to have you. Good to have you. So you have a lot of stories that you have personally experienced, your family's experienced. You've created a platform for other people to talk about their experiences. But this interview is more about letting you just talk about you and what you know to be true from what you've experienced, collected in data and information over the years.
Yeah, thank you. And it's always a hard thing to do. I'm not too fond on talking about myself and my journey. Even what I'm known for, my family's UFO crash. Within there, I strictly talk about my mom and my family and the situation, and oftentimes I keep myself out of it. And yeah, a little bit about me. I was born and raised in southern New Jersey here in the United States. I moved around a lot, single mother, a lot of different experiences with all of that. When I was around 16 years old, I started to get involved with church. When I graduated, I went to Bible college. I became a youth minister, an ordained pastor. After that, I started a Christian metal, heavy metal band that was out of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, and we were signed to CI Records in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And we did a lot of touring, helping young kids, and at that time I was maybe, uh, you know, uh, 20 years old, etc. And we were just going around the country, five dudes getting sweaty every night, rocking out, playing metal music, and just helping kids that came from drug addiction, abusive homes, the struggle of having a single parent, and just showing them, God's love and just being there for them, not forcing religion down their throat, not giving them repent to Jesus or you're going to hell, just showing these kids love in a society that was loveless. And we went after what we call the undesirables. And I've always been kind of that person and that character that I've always been willing to go for the least of these, not so much the top of the crop. So that was our mission. That's what we did. After the band ended and stuff, I started, I was a youth pastor for a little bit. And then I ended up going through a whole lot of uh, grief and sad situations. I eventually ended up living in Turkey, Samsun, Turkey, in the Middle East for 2 years, where publicly I taught English. And I was doing that for a while, and it was amazing, some of the things that I learned and discovered. And so sad, the giant earthquake that happened in Turkey today. So many people, and I have a lot of friends in all the cities, and I'm just worried, and I'm hoping I didn't lose anyone that I was friends with. But yeah, catastrophic event, not to mention Göbekli Tepe and other tempe sites, ancient sites around the world, 12,000 years old, are found within this location. And I'm praying my butt off that these sites did not get destroyed from this, even though that's a side note to the human life. I have a connection with Göbekli Tepe, and it's just, something in me is a little uneasy right now because of that. I don't know, it's messing with me. And not just that, there's literally thousands of other ancient sites over there. I was living in the heart of Anatolia, Mesopotamia. I had the Hittites, the famous Hittite Empire, the civilization. In my backyard in the mountains, they had caves and caverns and palaces with mummies. They did mummification just like the Egyptians. The Hittite or one of the only empires that had a non-binding peace treaty with Egypt. That's how powerful they were. Yet they were lost within history and not recently, discovered this massive empire that the public and scientists and the archaeology field know very, very little about. And had an amazing time. I studied ancient Islam, Sufism, a big part of, that if you had to call me a Muslim, that's my department. Shams Tabrizi, Rumi, these great philosophers. That's what I study. Great men, in my opinion, along with a lot of the history within that area, going back. A lot of the places in the modern day Bible. I've been there. I've been to my cities, and I get it. I understand, and the energy found in these places, most Americans could never comprehend something, that old. Even though here in America we're surrounded by it, but it's been squashed out by the Smithsonian and so many other agencies. But yeah, I've done a lot of things after living in the Middle East. I came back to America. I thought everything would be different. I just had this amazing experiences. I was friends with some of the most influential leaders in that country. I guess you could say I was very, very well connected over there, to the point that when I came back to the United States, they actually questioned me if I was a terrorist twice. In Qatar, they questioned me, and when I came back in Philadelphia, they questioned me. I obviously got out of it. I'm not a terrorist, but the U.S. government was not too happy because they have been watching me and my family for a long time, and I disappeared from their radar. Which they may not realize it, but them taking a notice in me lets me know that they've been watching all along, and they were not happy that I was over there doing what I was doing publicly, in an English teacher. But I was doing a lot more than that privately. So yeah, and then I came back to the United States. I was struggling. Uh, the country was actually 10 times worse when I came back. And I'm like, what's going on? I was completely out of it. I was having a hard time. I was going through culture shock with my own culture. My family didn't feel like my family. It was just such a different way of life. And I really got settled in Turkey, and it just felt like home. So coming back was hard. And then I eventually became a warehouse manager of a commercial door and frame company that I worked at for 5 years. So my job was lifting big commercial doors and carrying doors around all day. And yeah, that's what I did. And then a bunch of very unfortunate events happened in 2020. My mother died. At the time my mother was dying, my job illegally fired me because my mother was dying. I was in a lawsuit with them. It took about a year. Awful stuff. I lost my mom. As soon as my mom died, that's when the virus just started. So I couldn't have a funeral, couldn't have closure, couldn't have any of that. She was in Florida. I couldn't be with her. It was really, really hard. 2 months after going through all of that awfulness, after 30 years, I finally found the evidence of my family's UFO crash case, my mother's alien abductions. After 30 years of not having any evidence, I found it 2 months too late. And my mother really went through it. She was mocked, she was ridiculed, people thought she was crazy. And it just broke my heart that I could find this evidence validating what my family went through, what I went through. I was 3.5 years old when this happened. And it was so hard growing up in society where they all have this, mentality. And even though on TV you see extraterrestrials and UFOs, but then they tell you it's not real, it's science fiction. And then I'm a young kid that knows these things are real. It was really hard to use discernment at such a young age. And it was one of those things where I learned I couldn't really talk about it, especially without evidence. But it was quite a remarkable case, and it really changed everything for me and my involvement with this community and what I'm doing now. As you said, I just recently had you on New Era of Contact, my show on my YouTube channel, and you were sharing your story. And that's what I do. I have all different people, all different backgrounds, all over the world come on this show and share their stories because I'm trying to make up for like a penance of my mother never having the validation and the support behind her of someone to say, yes, this is what you went through. So, I wasn't able to provide that for her until 2 months after she passed. And if these communities existed while my mother was still alive, I feel like she could have really been helped in an amazing way, but she didn't have that luxury. So now I'm going out of my way to provide that for others, for them to be able to share their experiences, because I know firsthand the damage it can do by keeping it inside. And I've made it my mission to help as many people as I can that remind me of my mother. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, to carry on her legacy and to help as many people that I can that have unfortunately had to suffer, be ridiculed, laughed at for simply having an experience outside their realms of reality. It's unfair, it's unjust, and I'm just trying to do what needs to be done.
Well, you're doing an amazing job, and I have to take a deep breath there because I was feeling a lot of compassion with your story, because it's tough enough on kids in their daily routine to get through their life than it is to have something so out of the ordinary occur that occurred, and then to watch what occurred to your family, to hide things. And that is just mind-blowing to me. But I feel, and I was getting messages here, that you had to be on those frequencies in order for you to identify with the frequencies as you were growing up. And now to bring those frequencies to you, to allow those people to get off of that frequency by having a platform that allows them to come out of the shadows and out of a taboo or something they're unsure of how to explain. You give them that platform to be able to express with no judgment. And I've noticed that more and more people are freely speaking through you and to you. And so I applaud you for that, but I'm sorry for the heartache as a child, what you went through. So give me a second here. I work with kids. I too have had a lot of hidden things that I don't talk about. So I can totally relate to what you're putting out there right now. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
I also got real close that your mom's working with you diligently from the other side of what she couldn't work with you in the here and now. And I'm sure you've had confirmations of that multiple times. You don't have to agree in this moment. People out here don't need to know some of the things that we know, right? We're
Yeah.
not here to prove
And
anything.
with
We're not
my
here to
mom,
prove. Yeah.
the crazy thing with my mom, in while she was alive in the human vessel, she was always talking to everyone and everything, but would always kind of keep me in the shadows of a lot of things. That mom trying to protect me. The main thing of my story, that's what the overall my UFO crash story. That's the main idea behind it. A mother that was willing to do anything to protect her family. Far beyond national security. But my mom, it seems to be, she's busy talking to everyone else. And I've had so many people that I come into contact with, just meeting them for the first time. And apparently they've been talking with my mom. And I don't hear her. I know she's there, but she's literally too busy yapping to everyone else and pulling strings. It's like she's all over the place, but right here, but she's doing all over the place to help me on the path that I am. So she's working overtime, and I know that she's with me, but ironically, I haven't had like a lot of experiences with her, but it's also very painful to me. So I really do everything in my power to kind of just, um, for me to really accept it all, to really take it in. And I know this kind of goes against a lot of people's ideas of healing and moving on in the process. But trust me when I say, if I was to take all the things I had to go through, all the things I had to witness with my mother while she was dying, the process of it, if I allowed that to take over me, I would be good for nothing or anyone. And I would become very destructive, not just to myself, to others. And, some things are best buried. And I know that can, expand and blow up someday, but, it's better than blowing up right now. And that's how I've been processing all that and what I'm doing with, my story and it being dedicated to my mother and helping others like my mother. It does give me that disclosure. And the more that I do that, helping others, the more that like starts to become a thought in the back of my mind, and it's helping the process. So everyone grieves differently, and I guess I'm one of those people.
Well, who are we to say how you're supposed to grieve? No one has the
Yeah.
right to say that. And, while you were talking, I was seeing like sometimes we have to take the emotional side in place here because the mission, the bigger picture, and the mission has to override this part. And so, for whatever is occurring, it is not necessary at this time with your mom and all those things to do the deep dive over here. It is about focusing here and overriding this part at the moment. And I don't mean putting it to the side and sloughing it away. That's not what I mean. It's compartmentalizing what is the mission in this moment, right? And that's really what you're on. And if there comes a time when you have to go there, you'll go there. But right now, you're not being called to go there. You're paving the way for other people to come forward and to share your mom's story, to share your story, and to share their personal story of what's been going on with them. So, and I also know that sometimes we may not get out from underneath the tears if we went there, and time doesn't allow us to indulge in that at this moment. But as our heart center is opening up a lot, we've got the Leo moon right now, which is all about the heart center. So we're having bursts of all these emotions going out. We're going to have a lot of memories coming out as the God memory tears start to flow forth, and we're allowing ourselves to process the emotional body. But to each his own and to each his own time. This is about no judgment, right? No explanation about anything or anyone. So let's go into what's the next step for you? Like, I mean, do you want to talk a little bit more about the experience? Because, by the way, folks, everything is on Order of Light on the YouTube, and you can go back and listen to all kinds of things that Robert puts out on his personal experience, on other people's experiences, so you can do a deeper dive there. This is more about getting to know Robert, allowing him to have a platform to just talk and not have to be the producer of his show as he does so well. So what would you like to share right now? Besides, I wanted to mention something about Turkey.
Okay.
Okay. I knew something was coming in the last couple of days because I had this low level anxiety. And I kept saying something's about to erupt within Mother Earth, but I didn't know what it was. And Spirit kept saying, don't focus on it. You don't need to roll the globe and figure out where it is. It's not important. And it's been interesting because it's been a lot of what I want to call that rumbling and trepidation of something that I embrace versus bracing and resisting. So I'm not at all surprised that it was Turkey, because Turkey has so much deep, rich history that many people don't even know about. So I'm so glad you were able to live there and experience all of that. And I do hope that your friends are okay. And I do hope that some of the history has been preserved. But again, spirit makes sure what's supposed to be saved will get saved, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And yeah, so I guess to go a little bit, as you were talking about my YouTube channel, Robert Earl White, Order of Light, on there, when you go to the channel, you'll see my newest up and coming videos. And then if you scroll down, you'll see a playlist called My UFO Crash Story. And just to really briefly, all of you can watch it. I have like 4 different parts, a lot of interviews, additional videos about the area and the nuclear plant. But just real briefly, it was April 21st, 1991. I lived in a small town in southern New Jersey called Lowerways Creek. The creek that was behind our house, there was an old bridge that was right there, 1 car at a time, wooded bridge with iron truss rods on it going over the creek. The creek was directly connected to the Salem County nuclear plant. I lived very close to a nuclear plant. And this is all part of this. And my house, my mother's house, which was technically my grandfather and grandpop's house, long story, but we all lived there. Uh, we had a line of trees behind our house, and behind that line of trees was the bridge and the creek. Directly next door, we lived out in the middle of nowheres, a lot of marshland, a lot of foxtails, basically the Alabama of South Jersey. Because of the nuclear plant, there wasn't a lot of building that was going up in the area. They were actually trying to make it even more remote. So directly next door, we had my aunt Booty. It was 10:18 at night, 10:18 p.m. She was getting ready for bed. She went into her bathroom. She looked out the window. She noticed elongated triangular, black triangular craft just silently hovering there. The cloud coverage obtained within the reports that I discovered, the cloud coverage was at 1,200 foot. So it was raining, the clouds were low, and this craft was maybe a telephone pole or 2 above the tree line to give you kind of like an angle that we were looking at it on. And on this elongated triangular black craft, very thin, not rounded corners, very sharp looking, has 3 blue lights and a crazy white light coming from the center of it. None of the lights really look like lights that you would really see on modern day crafts or lighting setups. They seem like some sort of plasma technology or that kind of light source where it's just like, oh, what are we looking at? But my aunt, she sees this. She walks back into her bedroom. It was completely silent, not making any noise. She goes into her bedroom, picks up her phone, calls my mother next door. My mom was watching a baseball game with 2 of her girlfriends also there. I was upstairs on my bed, and my mother hears the phone ringing. She goes to the kitchen. She picks up the phone. The kitchen was in the back of her house, which is facing the direction of this craft. She picks up the phone. My aunt says, "Oh my God, Beth Ann, look out the back window. There's something just hovering there." My mom goes and my mom screams real loud, "Oh my God, oh my God, what is that? What is that?" At this point, her 2 girlfriends watching the baseball game on the couch, they heard the commotion and they were all young. My mom was 22 years old, single mom, a lot of her party friends, stuff like that. They come running. I hear the commotion of my mom screaming and her friends. It was a smaller house. So people running towards the back of the house. I'm like, what's going on? So my bed was on the edge of the window. If I stood up on my bed, I had the window right there looking out the back. So at this point, I'm looking at this thing too, but I was only 3.5 years old. Who's going to believe a child? Absolutely no one. So I tell this story from the perspective of the adults and the first responders and government officials, etc. As they were watching this, for about 5 minutes was the entire event. All of a sudden, all simultaneously, a white beam of light or a ball of light, and it all happened at the same time. Red and orange sparks started shooting out of this craft. like simultaneously as this ball of light or light beam, whatever, this quick light thing that came down onto it, simultaneously red and orange sparks. And then the whole craft exploded, except the center bright white light I was telling you about actually imploded on itself. It like sucked itself into itself. And the outskirts of the craft exploded as you would imagine a normal explosion to occur. And the core of whatever was left of this thing shot straight down. And this all happened simultaneously. We were all flinching. We actually thought the debris was going to hit our house because the angle we were looking at it. This thing was the size of a very large military helicopter. To kind of give you an idea of the length, but it obviously wasn't. And helicopters are very loud. This thing was silent. It was thin. It was sharp. And although it was raining dark, because of the lights on it and the wetness of the rain and everything, you could kind of, it seemed like a very strange black texture. And it was nighttime. That's all we could see of it. And that bright light in the center of it was like blinding, truly like blinding. So it was really, really hard to get. But because of the lights, that's how we knew the shape and size of this, because it was kind of reflecting. And after this thing exploded, my mom screamed. Everyone was screaming. She hung up the phone. She called 911. What happened after that is the Lower Alloways Creek incident. The men in black came to our house along with the Air Force. The Coast Guard were on site with black tarps, tarping everything up, turning the firefighters that went there. My cousin was actually a fire chief, Calvin Hill. He was heading there, and the Coast Guards that were armed with black tarps on there, they had their cutter guard boat sitting right there in the creek. They ordered the firefighters to turn back around. They went back to the firehouse, which was the local hangout. We didn't have bars, we didn't have restaurants, we had nothing. All the younger folks all hung out at the firehouse. It was the only place open all the time. So at that point, these two women, one by one, they went to scope it out because the firefighters came back, said that was really weird. As they were approaching the scene, they saw gouges in the marsh. They didn't see any fire marks, but they saw the big black tarps laid out over the marsh and the boat there. And they were telling these women it was real strange. They didn't know what to make of it. We're country folk, simple-minded backwoods folk, you know. So the one girl, they went down as far as they could. They actually had the road closed. Till this day, the road is still closed along with the bridge. It closed down the night of the UFO crash. Anyone can go there and see that it's still closed. She went as far as she could, and they just set up barriers at the time saying it was closed. She witnessed a tree cutting service, removing trees from the area. And she went back to kind of report to the firefighters, the other woman, what she saw. 30 minutes went by. The other girl went, out there. At this point, it would have almost probably been like 11:40 at night, 11:40 at night. And the other girl goes out there and she sees a flatbed truck, and there was a black tarp on the back of the flatbed truck. It was not a military truck. And that's all she saw. She saw the flatbed lights going, the back, and tarped object on the back of this truck, which kind of gives us a time frame. By 11:40, 12 a.m., the site was cleared. Throughout the night, as I mentioned, about 25 minutes after my mom made the 911 call, we had two cars. Out the one car, two gentlemen wearing black suits, black hats. Yes, the men in black. Out of the other car was a gentleman in the Air Force, clearly dressed in Air Force uniform, little, medals, regalia, etc. Very standard. Didn't think anything was strange until, my family invited them in, thinking they would have questions about what just exploded behind our house. Why wouldn't the government want to know what happened? But it wasn't until the men in black started speaking that my mom, her friends realized something else was going on there. And the men in black were not there because something just crashed behind her house. They never asked my mom what happened. What did you see? The first question they asked, can you draw three different types of extraterrestrials? What does that have to do with the experience that my family just went through? And to keep it brief and simple, a lot of stuff went down. My mother was threatened. The men in black did answer my mom's questions, and then they threatened her that if she wouldn't report it as a helicopter to all the news agencies, that they would be tipping off to come out the next day. They told us they would be doing that, and that's exactly what they did. My family remained anonymous. They backwoods religious people. We didn't want to be called wackos or nothing like that. Bible thumping area, you know. So they, like I said, they said, if you don't report this as a helicopter, we'll take your son away. My mom said, okay, I understand. They left the following day. All those reporters came out. Also that night, my mother, around 1 a.m., 4 search and rescue helicopters, one with thermal camera, around 1 a.m. to about 4:30 a.m. My mom was on the phone with 4 search and rescue helicopters, letting them know when they were in the area. They didn't find anything because the Coast Guard and military already cleared it out by the time the 4 search and rescue helicopters came. It was already gone. So yeah, and it turns out through the Men in Black and the Mutual UFO Network and many others, my mom was an abductee. She was in contact with these beings. The reason this craft was behind our house to begin with was because they were doing things with my mother, and it's a remarkable story. And for anyone that would like to hear more about that and some of the additional evidence, information, and details of my mother's experiences, you can check that out on my YouTube channel under my UFO crash playlist on my main channel, Robert Earl White Order of Light. So that's a very condensed. It's a lot deeper than all of that.
It's still a lot. It's still a lot. And yes, thank you for that, because they can go to your channel and get more details. So, question for you. Are you under two things? Are you under the understanding that first, that your mom was already an abductee that you weren't aware of when you were 3, and 2, the craft that came over, that was it hit by a white light to destroy it, or like, what do you think the black craft was? Do you think it was the ones that were abducting? Because you hear of abductions all the time, children and so on. Do you think that was one of the crafts that came to, do an abduction and then it was destroyed?
Well, to answer both questions, I'll start with the second one. I believe that it was some sort of energy weapon of some sort that took this craft down. These highly advanced crafts that have the capability to travel around the cosmos, you really think they're just going to come here and crash in some random hillbilly's backyard in southern New Jersey? No. Who was behind firing this energy weapon at this craft? That I have no idea. But it did seem that whatever this light thing was that came down and hit this craft was what initiated the sparks and then the explosion to happen. When MUFON came out, they did reporting. I have all the articles. And, up till this moment, my mom was completely clueless about extraterrestrials. She was also completely clueless about her experiences prior to that. And in the article, it's reported that the night before the UFO crash, my mom had a strange dream, which was a screened memory, and that's a whole story. But after the Men in Black and the gentlemen in the Air Force, they did a very brief regression. And then in the following weeks, the Mutual UFO Network also came out and did multiple regression hypnosis therapies with my mom. About 3, 4 weeks afterwards, the show Unsolved Mystery Sightings, they were also recording my mother under hypnosis as well. They were going to block out her face, but that never aired. No surprise. Look who else was involved, the Men in Black. But long story short, after my mom had these regressions, it says hypnosis, every time these things would happen from those points onward, she would remember them clearly. It's almost like the veil was lifted. And also, along with that, in the regressions, it turns out they've been doing this with my mom since she was a baby. And it's not just her, it's a family kind of situation. And but for my mother and I, our realization of that was not until 1991. That's when it clicked off. 3.5 years old. My mother, as a good mother, would explain these things in a very childish way. She had pet names for all these different beings. She told me, honey, never be afraid. You have nothing to worry about, no reason to be afraid. She drove that point because of the media and the science fiction movies I'm watching and stuff. And I know these things are real, and I'm seeing them massacring entire countries and blowing up the White. I'm like, well, what's going on? Like I didn't have that discernment, so my mom had to work overtime and really calming me and like, it's all right, they're just curious. That's how she would explain some of the ones doing scientific experiments on her and things like that. But she was in contact with a lot of different beings. And to kind of go back to why this craft went down, my mother was in the hybrid program with a species she called the tall whites. These tall whites have been known to fly these crafts, hence the government's TR-3B, the government's UFO, was based off a technology that they receive from these tall whites that work alongside of our governments in the military complex, the privatized sector. And a lot of these technologies, the TR-3Bs, are essentially watered down versions of whatever this craft was. And there was a connection in between my mother and these tall white beings. At the same time, she had a lot of encounters with beings she called Nordics. Other ones she called the Blues, which she loved. She said they looked like gray extraterrestrials, very tall, but they had blue electricity coming off of their skin, is the way she described it. And she really, really loved them. She liked the mantises sometimes. It depends on, she called them praying mantises. She had encounters with what she called the snakes, Draco, reptilian species. She did call the Zetas Zetas. For some reason, she knew what Zetas were. But everything else was a pet name. And she had a lot of encounters, and a lot of these other beings, there's a real positive, and she was under the impression that they were trying to help her from a lot of the physical woman problems she was having from being a part of this hybrid program. The constant menstrual bleeding, 3 weeks out of every month for her entire life, having her tubes tied and still miscarrying things that weren't necessarily human. Unfortunately, I saw one of them. I don't want to get into it. It's traumatizing. And so my mom had her lung drop. Her lung dropped when she was 25 years old. It's from going from here, going to there, and some grays, their atmospheric on their crafts aren't like the humanoids crafts. It's not a lot of oxygen. It can kind of feel like you're suffocating sometimes. And this lung drop is something that can be found in divers that go extremely deep underwater and astronauts that do a lot of missions in space. That's commonly where it's seen. And my mom was 5'9", very skinny, very beautiful, healthy young woman. And to just have her lung collapse for no reason whatsoever, it's very, very strange. So there was a lot of physical side effects that my mom went through, and she really felt that some of these beings were trying to patch her up while other beings were just using her for whatever their mission was. But she always told me I was never afraid. And I know this isn't what the mainstream media once, but even the ones that were doing questionable things to her, she said she was never afraid, and she just let them have a way, almost like she had an understanding, or understood what was going on, and she allowed herself to be a part of it, which that's a whole nother conversation in itself.
It
But
is. I hear you so loud and clear. I'm going back to a couple things. And one is the craft had been visiting her and obviously was then picked up by military or whatever and taken out. And then that actually helped her remember. And then the work that she went on to from there helped her remember what was going on. So instead of it being erased from her memory, it was amplified. So as you know, I've been doing past life regression work on myself for 3 decades. And then I also have studied it and became a regressionist. And I actually call it emotional trauma releasing, etc. And I've had clients who have no idea until we're in a session that things are occurring off planet to them. And I've been able to work with these clients to help them understand better their agreements before they came in, some of which were I agreed to come in and be experimented on behalf of this particular race, and many other things that have occurred. So it's an exchange of learning once you become a physical avatar. Before you've agreed to something. Now, the beauty of regression work is you can go into these memories, understand them better, and then make decisions on whether you're going to continue to be that experiment, because you have the right to say no once you become aware of it. So when I'm hearing you, I'm saying this out loud, not to say what I do and what I experience, but it's more to bring it to the viewers who are watching this. You're talking my language. I mean, I understand a lot of what you're saying, but many viewers out here might not. So in her regression work, she was able to even bring forth more information, which helped her understand things. And she was also doing it in a way to protect you too. But unfortunately, when you're what we want to call the human pincushion, we suffer. We don't know why we're suffering until we go into these sessions and can have an understanding what's happening subconsciously that I'm storing that's affecting my now. And your mom had a lot of that. And your living experience is to witness a lot of that, which I'm sure was extremely foreign to you, to watch your mom go through all the things that she went through, especially once this crash occurred.
yeah, and as you said perfectly, the crash, that was the spark. That's what started it all. And then throughout the years, I don't talk about this one publicly, but I've seen these beings interacting with my mother. And in a story that I don't share publicly, it's very embarrassing. It's one of those things as a kid you wish you never would have saw, but it was what it was. And a lot of other strange things, and experiences my mom has had, things she confided in me. It wasn't until I was 24 years old and I had my own encounter physically right in front of me with a blue light being. That's when my mom finally filled me in on a lot of things she didn't tell me up to that point, trying to protect me. And she said, I was waiting for you to become old enough and have your own experience before dropping this information on you. And I'm glad she did, because I don't know if I could have been able to handle that before. I could barely handle it when I did hear it, but I could not imagine having that on my plate as a kid. And I'm so thankful that she was wise enough and mature enough to learn to keep me in the dark. It really was for my best interest. I'm thankful for that. And, any good mother would do that, all about protecting their kids. And a big part of why she remained anonymous and really just stopped talking about it and all that. As you said, it must have been really hard for me watching all this. But I remember I was probably like 6 or 7 years old. We were at a bonfire, big party. We were at her house, actually. She had maybe 8 to 9 of her friends and stuff all around the fire. Someone started talking about a Steven Spielberg movie, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And they were just yapping about it. It's nighttime, everyone's drinking. And my mom says, I have a story for you. And my mom started saying everything. And they all started laughing at her. And I was only, 6, 7 years old, very young. And I'm watching all these adults that were my mom's friends, people that I called uncle and aunt, even though they weren't. Everyone was my aunt and uncle, like real close family friends. And the rejection, and my mom just started bawling and she yelled real loud. She stopped. She says, I'm not an effing liar. And she was bawling her eyes out and she just walked away. And I was just left there alone, knowing that my mom was telling the truth. I was there. I saw it, and I was just a 6, 7 year old boy, and there was nothing I could do to stop these people from making fun of my mom and calling her a crazy bee and all this. And it broke my heart. And it was that exact moment that I learned I need to shut up about this. If I want to have friends, if I want to be successful, if I don't want to be made fun of more than I already was, I need to shut up. And that's what I did for a very long time. I would confide it in people along the way after years of knowing them. And some of them would receive it. Some of them would believe me. Some of them would kind of give me that look and not really want to talk about it. But like I could pick it up. I'm like, yeah, you think I'm off my rocker, don't you? And then they would hear it coming from my mom, and they'll go, I thought you were making it up, but after hearing your mom, and I would be on tour with my bands. We would stay at my mom's house. My mom would be there telling all these bands, these big metal bands on record labels about the story, and they were blown away. Like they believed it, but the average people, not so much. So it was a lot to deal with, and I had to keep it, especially when I was a pastor. Um, and big part of why I was kicked out of the church was because I saw that light being. So I was exactly right in not talking about these things, because the second I actually had an experience, well, it's evil.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Anything someone doesn't know enough about, they immediately shut it down. And the kids have a lot of this stuff intact before they're 7. And the ones that it isn't shut down when they're 7 and they carry it on up into close to teens, of being able to interact with other beings, right? It's very normal to them. But in the teen years is a real typical time for them to shut it down, because they're already going through their own hormonal changes, and then the likes and the dislikes, and trying to figure out where you belong in different packs and tribes of school and play, etc. So a lot of teenagers will completely shut this down, and a lot of this information doesn't come back out until an emotional trauma occurs, or they really want to open the window and figure out, why are certain things that I don't understand? Well, I want to know more about them, or more about myself, and what makes me tick. And so going into hypnosis and regression work brings that out. And then you can figure that out. So your mom was right not to bring it up to you until later, way past your teens, right? She did that strategically to make sure that you didn't have a shutdown, a complete shutdown, where you would have gone in the opposite direction of her until you were old enough and something occurred in your adult years, and you're still young, would bring that up. And one of the reasons why I love working with kids is they have freedom to speak to me, and then I can be the bridge between them and their parents. And 9 times out of 10, their parents have had a similar or some sort of familiarity to what that child is saying. So now they're creating a space in the home where they can share this and feel like they're heard, and it's accepted in some way, and not have to take it to school and out into public where you would be ridiculed, because there's not that unconditional love and acceptance out there. But that's my whole goal, is to get situations like this out there so people can have more comfort and not go into their adult years more messed up than they are through life. So I am in some ways completely shocked that you've turned out to be such a high functioning intelligent, amazing, heartfelt human with some of the things that you had to experience, and you didn't shut that down. So whatever's working with you, through you, and for you on your better behalf, the world's a better place having you in it, talking about these things. So I will speak just for me. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much. It means a lot. And yeah, it's a lot. And I am lucky that I turned out the way. Sometimes when I'm reflecting through my life, you know, suffering can lead to two things. Someone that suffers their whole life can take that out and make others suffer, or they can take that suffering and turn it into a compassion for others. I have made very, very clear attempts to make sure that I'm transmuting that suffering into a way to help others. Because if it went the other way around, it would just all be suffering. And I try to, I'm really good at taking such an awful situation and finding the light in it. Always looking for the light in everything, even within the darkness, and always trying to see what can we take away from this, what can we learn from this, what can we do about this. And I'm very fortunate to be doing what I'm doing, and it could have went a lot of different ways, but everything happens for a reason, does it not?
Yes. And I just keep seeing your heart glowing bigger and bigger and bigger, because you're more than just the human Robert Earl White. You are your higher self, your guide team, the God spark. And listen, folks, this might sound all like blah blah whatever, but when you're actually in it and you're being a pioneer, there's a lot of pain and suffering in that, because there's a lot of rejection in it. And when you're really empathic, you pick up on what everybody else is saying, even when they're not saying it. So I can relate to some of that without getting deep into it, because it was just making me teary-eyed. But I appreciate you. I appreciate your platform, the stories that you have personally experienced. Who is to argue with that? You have personally experienced things that you're sharing, and then you're allowing your platform to be there for other people to come in and share their personal experiences. So this isn't so taboo. This isn't so in the evil corner, if you want to say it. And again, that's a program that we're moving out of, because of programs like you and what you're putting out for others. And
Making it socially acceptable is a good way of putting
yes.
it. Making it, when we're at a family picnic, get together, we should be able to talk about seeing our great grandfather's ghost coming to us in the middle of the night. It should be okay to talk about these things, making it more socially acceptable. Yes.
Yes, and thank you for that. And I know that it's been a long and hard road, a lot of bumps, a lot of emotions, but you appear to be handling it well, and putting out content that helps others. So before we end this, because we're definitely going to have a part two, my man. But that's a lot of information and feelings that we're putting through here, because I can just tell the viewers that are going to listen to this are going to really be able to tap into the feeling of this. Is there anything else that you would like to share with everyone? Of course, all your links will be in the description, etc. But is there anything that you would like to share before we go?
Absolutely. Don't wait. Don't wait until it's too late. Share your experiences. I know it takes courage. There may be people that call you crazy or make fun of you, but when you find someone that resonates with your story, when you meet someone else out there that has went through one of your experiences and you get to have that validation, it makes all the awful things said about you all worth it. And that's what it's all about. Don't hold back. It doesn't have to be too late. If there was ever a time to come forward with your experiences, now is the time to do it. I have a new series on top of the interviews that I do called My First Contact, where I'm allowing people to record a 10-minute video or less of themselves. They record it going over their first contact experience, their first paranormal experience, their spiritual awakening, so many different things. Whatever that first contact, whatever that first experience was that opened up your eyes to the possibility that maybe there's more than what we're seeing. I have people sending me their videos. I put them all together in episodes. I had my first contact part one. It went very, very well. It was mind blowing. And, I'm not a judge. I'm not the judge and jury. My job in this community is not to say that person is full of crap and that person is telling the truth. That's not my mission. My mission is to help people share their experiences. If they're lying about their experiences, if they're being deceptive, that's not my problem. That's equivalent of me doing a kind deed, giving a homeless person $50 to bless them so they could eat and get clothes, and that homeless person uses that on really negative things. That's not my job. That's not on me. I did my blessing. I did good. What people do with that good, that's on them. And if people, are untruthful or whatever, that's not my job. My job is just to allow people to have a chance to share their experience with no judgment. I know how that judgment feels. And unlike a lot of people that do come on my show, I have evidence. And because I'm one of the few people with very hard evidence about my family's case, I feel like it's my responsibility to kind of go out of my way to help others that don't have that evidence. Because for 30 years, I did not have that evidence. Hence all the pain I had to go through, all that. Oh, if people just knew, if I ever found evidence, I know it would be like the next Roswell. So was I wrong? Because I found the evidence and still no one seems to recognize it, understand, or care, or really comprehend what's going on. Also, there's so many wild, fantastical stories being made up and put out there that oftentimes people miss the plain, boring truth. Even though the plain, boring truth, although it's not as sexy as the lies, it's still the truth, and there's weight and value. And we need to make sure that we don't just focus on the Hollywood stories being produced, and that we really focus on the real experiences, regardless of how cut and dry, how plain or vague it may be. That's where the real information lies. So I'm trying to find that balance and just using that to really help others that maybe don't have evidence of what they experienced, and kind of stepping in there, and it's like, well, I believe you. Let's go. Let's hear about it. So yeah, share your experiences. I got a lot of other videos up there too. I literally have like probably 40 UFO videos I haven't had time to upload. I have one video that's 12 minutes long where I record 8 UFOs, one continuous video. It's I can't keep up with it. So I have a lot of stuff I'm going to be putting out soon. I got a lot of great videos, short little whistleblowers, hidden documents that have never been shared, great little fun videos about, the disclosure. I do a lot of like historical stuff, and insiders, whistleblowers, deathbed confessions, and I try to find the stories that have been overlooked. that it's kind of like what I do. It's like my story. So I go out my way to find those stories from people that don't have social media accounts. They're just everyday, normal, wonderful, lovely people. They have nothing to gain. They don't have a YouTube channel to promote. Those are my favorite people I have come on the show because it's just so pure, and like it's their experience and they don't have answers. My favorite guests are people that don't have the answers. And when someone doesn't have answers, I actually believe them more than the person that has an answer for everything. To know the right answer, we must ask the right questions, and no one is asking questions anymore. People are just delivering answers, and we need more questions. So that's a big part of my interviewing process. I just allow people to share from beginning of their life up to this moment, and I ask questions to help them realize their own experience. And that's what it's all about.
Well, I think you work, live, breathe, and walk what it is you're the most passionate about, and you're doing that, and you're a prime example of that. And personally, the plain old simple truth I find to be very sexy. And the more people who can get out there and tell the plain old truth and stop putting all the bells and whistles to it and embellish things, we're going to find more sexy in the plain old truth. So thank you for that. And thank you for being here with us. Everyone, again, please like, subscribe, share, and comment. We love them, and it helps the algorithm rotate our message. The more people get to hear it and experience it, and more people get to expand their knowledge or maybe into a subject they weren't familiar with, and just have an adventure with it. And next thing you know, you may remember some of the things that occurred to you, or you heard a story about someone else. And if that's the case, then Robert can do some work with that too. So much love and light to everyone, because you're walking, living columns of light with the God spark within you. Live it, walk it. And again, like, subscribe, share, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye, Robert.
Thanks. Bye bye.